What's up guys, welcome back to Cityscape Brewing. Have you guys ever walked out to your kegerator or keezer and realized, oh crap, your CO2 tank is empty? Well, that just happened to me. And guess what? I have a 20-pound tank that I bought less than a month ago. So I got a leak. So I thought this was a great idea to troubleshoot along with you guys so we can see what to do first and where we went wrong. But first, I need all of you guys to hit that like and subscribe button, grab yourself a beer, and we're gonna get after it. But also, if you wanna become a channel member and get these videos early and get some exclusive recipes that are just for channel members, go ahead and hit that join button. It's a couple bucks a month. It helps out the channel a lot, and you get to become a Cityscape VIP. So go ahead and hit that join button, become a member, and get those member perks. All right, so we got a CO2 leak. Now what? Well, the next thing is we need CO2. So I have two tanks. I have a 5-pound tank and a 20-pound tank. And right now, just so happens, both are empty. So I guess we're making a trip to the store to get those refilled. But afterwards, after we have CO2, we can start testing these things out and see where the leak is. So ask yourself, what did you change last? If your CO2 was working correctly the first time and all of a sudden you just sprung a leak, well, it probably was something you did recently. And so I just force carbed my Mexican lager, Ocho de Junio. Go check out that video, by the way. This is a banging beer, awesome for summer. So definitely must be something related to that keg, right? Or so I thought. So the first thing that I did after I get a new CO2 tank hooked up is I went ahead and I opened up my fridge. I started looking at that specific keg with the Mexican lager in it. I had force carbed that keg with a different line, so it could have been with that secondary regulator and line, or it could have been with the line that is at serving pressure, because it had partially depleted while I was force carbing, and I kind of noticed the CO2 tank was getting low. At that point, I should have really tested things out and see where my problem was, but I decided I was going to wait till the morning, and then it was completely empty, which was definitely my fault. If you ever run into that issue where you see your regulator really dropping and it shouldn't be that low, shut the CO2 tank off completely, and then you'll preserve any CO2 you have until you can find the problem. And don't worry about the kegs, they're going to be fine. So what I did is I hooked it up to my regular hose that I would use for my serving pressure. And then I took just a simple bottle of Star San, like this one here. It's a great idea to always have one of these on hand. I keep this Star San bottle filled every time I have a brew day. I just change out the sanitizer because I have new stuff that I've made, and this works perfectly for finding leaks. And so what you do is you just take this thing and you spray it all over the top of the keg, and you check the seals in the lid. That's most likely the problem, because a lid needs to seat correctly on top. Even a little tiny sliver of a hair through there will leak CO2. To help that, you can use a product called Keg Lube, and what you do is you put a thin layer all the way around the larger O-ring on the keg lid. That will help it seat correctly, and it will help any CO2 leaking around the lid itself. Next, you're going to be checking the in connection to your keg. It's not the out connection, because you would have beer spilling out of that too. And so you can do that by either taking off the post connection completely, or just spraying it while it's on. And I do that when I'm checking my lid. Next though, if you don't see any bubbles, it could be underneath the connection and seeping out a little bit, and it's harder to detect the bubbles that way. But to test it further, you can always take the keg connection off and spray the post itself, because that poppet that's inside of that in connection could also have some type of loose connection, or the connection itself, the ball lock or pin lock connection, depending on the keg you have, could have some seal issues when you put it around the post. In order to test the connector, you can just grab a container of water and submerge that portion into water. Water here is your friend to tell. So if you think it's in the hose, submerge the hose in water, right? If you think it is in the connection, submerge the connection in water. You'll see bubbles coming from wherever there is a connection leak. You can also spray sanitizer on a manifold if you have one. That's where it splits the CO2 coming in from one line to, I have 4 different kegs. You can see if one of those valves has sprung a leak or somewhere around the manifold has sprung a leak. So you're kind of working backwards from the keg, back through the line to the manifold, and lastly to the regulators themselves. For every regulator you have, there is a valve on the bottom that opens and closes, or at least there should be. That's going to help you to stop CO2 coming from the regulator itself. And so you could have an issue with one of those valves, which I have in the past before. And so you can test both of those as well. And last but not least, the connection to your CO2 tank itself. So we're always looking at the end of the line, but it really could be at the beginning of the line. And in my case, that's exactly where it was. So I had moved my keg around, or my kegs on the side over here around a little bit. I moved my CO2 tank, and for some reason, the connection that was between my actual CO2 tank and the line that goes up to the regulator itself was moved and just slightly adjusted where there was a little bit of a leak coming through. I could not hear it. I could not see it or smell it, obviously, because it is odorless. But if it was a lot, you could hear the hissing. So what I did before I realized that was the issue is when I was hooking up my new CO2 tanks that I got refilled, is I sprayed that down immediately with Star Sand. And guess what? I didn't have it tight enough. And it's very important also that you keep the O-rings that come with your CO2 tank in there. Sometimes they have an O-ring built into that connection, and sometimes they don't. But a CO2 place should give you an O-ring in order to check that, to make sure that that is sealed correctly. And so make sure that's in there when you are making that connection to your line or your regulator. So hopefully you're not empty with CO2 like I am. But if you did, hopefully this video kind of helps you find out where to start and what to look for when it comes to a CO2 leak in your regulator, in your kegs, or in the CO2 tank itself. If you found this helpful, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. It helps the channel out tremendously. Grab yourself a beer. You deserve it after fixing your leak. Happy brewing and cheers. Hey, thanks for watching my video. I really do appreciate it. A way you can support the channel is just by buying me a beer. There's a button right there on the screen, and there's a link in the video description below. You can also check out the merchandise in our store, and you can hit the video on the screen right now. You know you want to.